Hello, I'm Jeanne Caldwell, and welcome to In His Presence. Have you ever felt at a loss on how to teach your young children how to pray effectively? Well, so did today's guest, Susan Case Biner. She's written a wonderful book to teach young children how to pray. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you
so glad to have you.
Thank you. And greetings from Michigan.
Oh, well, I've been there. It's wonderful. It's cool there, isn't it?
It has just turned spring. So,
really?
Yeah, the birds are taking baths in our driveway. It's lovely now, but it was a hard, long winter.
I bet. Well, let's talk about your background first. You have a degree in biblical education, is that right?
That's correct, yes, from Columbia International University. When I was attending back in the 70s, it was Columbia Bible College. They have become a university because they have changed their approach, and there's much more of an emphasis on the marketplace now, so that they are training people to be in ministry in the world, but with a biblical background. So it's very exciting. There's a seminary there also. It's an interdenominational evangelical Christian college, and just a wonderful, wonderful background they gave me in Bible.
That's wonderful. Well, how have you used your degree in teaching, in the teaching field?
Well, I started out in Sunday school as a layperson. I never intended to be out in the workforce. I was going to be a wife and mother, then became a parent. So, of course, my degree was very beneficial there, and that's how the book came about, because I wrote the prayer for my daughter. But then as my children went into school, I really wanted to do more, and so I started teaching in the Christian school, started in preschool, ended up in junior high. I also was a chapel coordinator, a chapel speaker, a conference speaker, and then I have been in church administration and, you know, a few other things thrown in.
Well, why did you find it difficult to teach your young daughter how to pray?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because I am a first-generation believer. So I didn't have the background of being trained in prayer as a young child. And then also, having just come out of Bible college, I think I wanted things to be too perfect. I think I wanted her to know everything all at once. And so sometimes that paralyzes you. So as I asked the Lord about it, He gave me the idea of taking the prayer He had taught His disciples and rewording it in a way that my daughter would speak.
Wow. So well, let's say this, how were you saved?
Well, it's really a very interesting story and very personal, like God always makes it. My mother had very, very good friends growing up through high school. She says that she remembers one of her friends having recently become a believer when they all had young children, coming to her and telling her about Christ's claims and about sin. And my mother looked in her eyes and said, "My child is not a sinner." But a couple years later, she went to a Bible study with her friend Pat and some other friends that she'd gone to high school with, realized what Christianity was all about, fell in love with Jesus, and that was the beginning of all of my family coming to faith in Christ. And I was about 12 when I received the Lord.
How wonderful. That is just wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, how did you end up going to Columbia Bible School?
From Michigan.
Yeah.
My pastor in my home church, after we became believers, some neighbors invited us to their church, and just a wonderful Bible-driven church, lots of Bible study, just one-on-one getting to know the Lord. And as I was mentored by that pastor through high school, I knew that I wanted to serve the Lord with my life, asked him for guidance. He had become involved in the, at that time it was a tape ministry of one of the professors there at Columbia Bible College. His name was Buck Hatch, just an outstanding Bible teacher. And he said, "Susan, I think you should take a look at the school," and that's how it happened.
Isn't that amazing? That's wonderful. Well, let's go back to your book now.
Okay.
How did you use the Lord's Prayer as a model?
Well, again, I think I tend to make everything a little bit complicated, and I can hear my family members giggling in the background as I'm saying this. So I needed a template, so to speak, to kind of get my bearings. Okay, I want to teach my daughter meaningful prayer. Mind you that she was very involved in praying. Wonderful prayers at night, but I could see that she was going to need some training, as we all do if we're going to grow in any endeavor. So the Lord just gave me the idea to go ahead and take His prayer, take it apart, put it back together, use her way of saying things, and voila, that's how it happened. It truly was a Lord-inspired endeavor.
Yeah, it was. Well, how did your book, My Whole Self Before You, come about?
Well, I wrote the prayer for my daughter about when she was 4. And it was shortly after that I was hired by our church in an interim Director of Christian Education position. And I went ahead and used the book, the prayer. It wasn't a book then. I made a little booklet out of it with cute little coloring pages and whatever for the children. And we used it as a weekly Bible devotional for young children. And it was during the summer. They would learn one of the verses. They would take home their prayer booklet. Their parents would reinforce that, pray it with them. They would color in the book, and then they would bring it back the next week. And so that made me realize this has some merit. Other people are being drawn to this. When we moved to Texas, I went ahead and started teaching, went to a Christian school convention in Dallas, met the wonderful Christian education professor, Dr. Robert Chown. He sent it to some of his contacts. Child Evangelism Fellowship picked it up, printed it in their learning magazine for their teachers, and he said that was my foot in the door. And then through the years, then we've developed it to be published in book form.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, would you describe the Lord's Prayer as the perfect template?
Oh. You know, what I love about what Jesus did is that He didn't teach them about prayer. He taught them a prayer. Not something that was to become an idol, so to speak, or something that they worshiped and never deviated from, but it was to be a springboard. So by saying these words to God, then they could begin growing in their understanding of how to talk to God and what things they should talk to Him about. And then they could begin venturing out on their own. So that wonderful template, that wonderful springboard that Jesus actually gave them.
That's so wonderful. Well, let's watch a short video introduction of the book. That is so wonderful.
Thank you.
My. Well, what age group does this book target and why?
The Green Book, as we call it, targets 3 through 8-year-olds.
3 through 8?
3 through 8.
Yeah.
And predominantly because the photos of the children are in that age range. So the Learning Guide helps parents to be able to have a basis of understanding of what Christianity is about, what prayer is about, so that they can go ahead and teach their children directly from the Scriptures.
Right. Well, why do you feel prayer is a skill that can be learned?
In 3 through 8-year-olds, I think you would agree with me that those are foundational years in a child's life. It's during those years, 3 to 8, that we are teaching and training them in all of the essentials of life. And so I don't think prayer should be any different. I think because prayer involves, is communication, involves friendship and understanding, that those are all skills to be nurtured and grow in. And so that's why I say that prayer is a skill to be learned.
Well, let's talk about the book as a learning guide for children.
The Learning Guide is actually my favorite part of the book. Of course, I love the prayer and all of those wonderful photos of children, but the Learning Guide is where my heart as a teacher is. It's what I wish I would have had as a young parent, because it is an outline for parents that brings it all together so that they don't have to worry that they're not going to be covering something, or if they put too much emphasis on this, then they'll negate that. It brings it all together so a parent can just take their child through the stories that Jesus taught to train them in how to know God and then how to talk and listen to Him in a meaningful way.
Wow, that's powerful.
Thank you.
Well, what is the difference between reciting a prayer and learning how to pray?
I think that prayer, many people think of prayer as talking. What the Lord has been dealing with me, even most recently, is that prayer is about talking and listening. And probably I should say that it's about listening and talking. And the way that we know that we are truly hearing the voice of God is, of course, through the Scriptures. As we interact with the Scriptures, we read them, we meditate on them, we are hearing God's voice to us. But that doesn't mean that that ends there, because as His Word takes root in our heart, He is able to bring that to our attention, apply that to our hearts in our daily activities. And so it's important for us to get used to that we need to be listening to what God is telling us, because He may, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, apply that word right directly to my heart. And so I need to learn to listen. So that's the first very important part of prayer. And then, of course, the second part goes with that. Once I've learned to listen to God, then of course I'm going to want to talk back, and He's going to want to hear what I have to say. And so it's that listening, talking.
That is beautiful. That is
Thank
just
you.
so beautiful. Well, why do younger children love rhyming? I think that is so neat.
Isn't that fun? And isn't that just true of every single one of us? There is something, I think it's because it's like music. It's lyrical.
Yeah.
There is something that connects with our whole self when there's rhyming, just like music. It stimulates every part of us, and it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
It is. And actually, that was one of the things that convinced us that this was something to pursue. This prayer is actually 9 verses long, quite long for a young child, and yet young children learn it very quickly because of the rhythm and rhyme.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That is so interesting. Well, the pictures you've included are just beautiful. And how do they enhance the book?
I think they enhance the book in several ways. First of all, one of the things that is so important to God's heart is that He loves all people, all races. It was very much on purpose that we chose photos that depict all races. And probably we don't have every single race in there, but we did our best to get as many as we could. And that's really, really important to God, but it's very important to people. We had a little girl come up at one of our conventions. She was 6 years old. She was Asian. She came over to the table, and she kept rubbing her fingers on the first photo of the little Asian girl, and she would say, "Mama, isn't she so pretty? I like her." And it's because she could see herself there. Another mother who had adopted an Ethiopian daughter was so thrilled to see the African children represented, because she said, "It is so hard for me to find quality books that depict my daughter." And then very interestingly, a mother of an autistic child came up and she said, "This exactly fits my child's learning spectrum because of the socialization represented in the pictures, and also the rhyme is easy for her to connect with." So we feel like the diversity of the photos meets a big need in our culture. It pulls, yes, reaches out. But then also, the whole thing of, you'll have to forgive me, I'm getting close to 60, so sometimes I forget my thoughts. Well, I'll come back to that a little bit later. It'll come to me. There's some other things that about the photos. I think that, I know what it is I was going to say. I think it's because they're about real people.
Yes.
One of my dear friends who was raised Catholic, and she is now, she puts herself in somewhat of the agnostic category. When she saw the picture, she said, "Wow, Susan, this is really great. I think I would have bought this for my child." She says, "Because when I was growing up, all I saw were illustrations, and it made me think that it was pretend, like Santa Claus."
You know, that's something. That's interesting.
I thought it was too. So that's another thing, is we just really feel like it's makes it centered in life. For children also, we like that the pictures are not just about children bowing their heads and folding their hands, because prayer takes place at all times of our day, in all parts of our lives. God doesn't need our hands folded and our heads bowed in order to hear us and for Him, for us to be able to talk to Him.
Oh, wow. Now, for parents who are new to faith and the Bible, how can they learn right along with their children?
One of the challenges of reaching this generation of children is that statistics are showing, studies that are coming out of the universities, is that this generation of young parents, many of them are biblically illiterate. So even if they have a desire to teach their child to pray, to teach their child the scriptures, they may feel like, well, yeah, but I don't know how. The great part about the learning guide is that they can learn right along with their child without feeling like they don't know what they're doing, because it just comes right from the scriptures. They get to read and learn.
That's interesting. Well, you were awarded the Moonbeam Children's Book Award. What does this mean for the book? Now, which book is that?
It's this one, yes.
The green one.
And actually, here's the one with the seal on it. Well, it's thrilling because an award of this nature, it's a national award, alerts booksellers, librarians, parents, anyone buying the book, that this is a book of special note. take notice. And so, of course, in that respect, it impacts sales, it impacts desirability. But for me specifically, it honestly helped me to realize that it wasn't just my mom and I who thought this book was great.
True. That's true.
And as I was at the award ceremony with these other authors and illustrators, I realized that I was in this wonderful group of talented people, and it made me come to terms with the way that the Lord had gifted me, and that this was something very special.
How wonderful. What are your long-term plans for the book?
Well, probably every author says this, but I truly, my goal for this book is that just as children's Bibles are found in many homes, that this book will become a classic found in many homes, and that instead of hearing children say, "Now I lay me down to sleep," when they go to bed, that if you were peering into their bedroom, you would hear them saying, "My whole self before you." And the reason that is my goal is because this prayer teaches how to know God and be in relationship with Him. We hope to, it is our goal to get this out not only across the nation, but have it translated into different languages around the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet you can do that.
Well, I hope, the Lord willing.
Well, what other books have you written?
Right now, we have 4 books that are available. The Green Book is the Child's Prayer with a Learning Guide. Our endorsers encouraged us to put out this yellow version, which is only the illustrated, the photos with the prayer for very young children. Then we also have I have written the first of 3 workbooks that are coming out. This is for lessons 1 through 32, and it takes each, if I can just show you a minute, it takes each lesson in the learning guide, does it in question and answer form as a little Bible study for children, and then what's great is the last part is for review. But it's not just reviewing what you've learned, it's reviewing what you've learned so that you can pray it back to the Lord.
That's wonderful.
We're trialing this right now in Christian schools in northern Michigan, both Protestant and Catholic. It's been received by both entities, and we're really thrilled. And the entire workbook, I'm hoping, will be finished by the fall. And then we will develop it into an actual curriculum for elementary.
Wow. Well, how do you see these books uniting different Christian traditions?
I think the Lord's Prayer is a uniter of Christians.
Yeah, I do too.
I think everyone feels that they own that prayer because it was given directly from Jesus. Interestingly enough, it's King Henry VIII who was the one who mandated that the prayer have a common wording. Back in the 1500s. And he based that on Wycliffe's translation of the prayer. And that's what, because as you think, no matter what church you go to, very similar. There's a little difference in debtors and trespassers, but very little difference. So it's something that we all own. So it's a uniter intrinsically, but then in the book, we have sought to make the areas that deal with preference. We acknowledge those, but we don't divide by those. Like Lutherans and Catholics, they divide or they number the 10 Commandments differently than most other Protestants. We bring that to light, and we use that as a uniter. The debtors and trespassers, we go ahead and explain those words, both terms. We unite rather than divide. There's difference of opinion on the doxology. Again, we educate about that. Unite rather than divide.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, if you'd like to order the book or contact Susan, you may write to Kid Niche Publishing, 1142 Carlisle Road, Traverse City, Michigan, 49696, or call 231-360-7320. And you may also visit them online at kidniche.com. Well, let me ask you this. We'll close out with this. Why did you create Kid Niche Publishing? And we got 2 minutes.
Our book was nearly picked up by Zondervan twice. The last time they were interested in the prayer only and not the learning guide. By that time we were very, very committed to the learning guide. And so we decided to go ahead and develop our own publishing company and market it ourselves. So that's how that came about. And you know, it's a big job, but with the Lord at your back, we promised him that whatever door he would bring our way, we would knock on it. If it opened, that we would go through. And he has been faithful to guide us all of the way.
That is just so wonderful.
Thank you.
And you're such a delight.
Thank you.
And, I know when I walked in, you know, with my last guest, and you just greeted me so beautifully, you know, I thought, well, you know, do I know this person? I didn't even know that you were my next guest until you said, I said, are you my next guest? And you said, yeah. And I thought, what a lovely, lovely person you are.
Well, thank you.
And I just
it.
praise God for you. Well, let's see what this thing is right there. That is your cover.
Thank you. For our newest book that's coming out, we've taken the learning guide out of the green book, and we've developed it as a devotional for children 8 and above, all the way up into high school, and illustrated it with red-eyed tree frogs.
Wow, that is so cute.
Thank you. We're real excited about it.
Well, do you have any last thoughts? And we got 30 seconds.
Well, of course, I just need to give credit where credit is due, and that is to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He is the one who is worthy of all of our attention, all of our praise, and just that wholehearted response to the privilege of serving him and living for him in this world.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
God bless you so much.
Thank you.
I want you to always remember, in his presence is fullness of joy. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today for In His Presence. You can write Jeanne Caldwell at Post Office Box 22007, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email her at jeannecaldwell@vtntv.com. To order a DVD of today's program, call 1-800-264-2525 and ask for the offer number on the screen. Join us next time as we meet in His Presence.